Hello everyone, today I want to talk about how the court case that I am involved in as a plaintiff, BOLAND v. BONTA, the court case challenging the state's Unsafe Handgun Act that limits what kind of handguns you can actually own. We have some new updates, some progress in that. A lot of people have been asking, hey, any updates on this, any updates on that? Well, the CRPA and Michelle and Associates have just recently filed a motion for preliminary injunction because we believe that this court case is going to be successful on its merits. We'll talk about what all that means. We'll talk about a whole lot of stuff regarding the case, the handgun roster in general, but if you want to know what's going on, this court case, BOLAND v. BONTA, is one of the handgun roster cases that would hopefully mean that if this is successful down the road, it would pave the way for you, a normal person in the state of California that is not law enforcement and not exempt, would be able to purchase normal, everyday, common handguns that are widely owned and used, the quintessential self-defense weapon, in pretty much every other state, because currently in the state of California, we are very limited. Before we get going though, I do want to say thank you to one of the sponsors of today's channel, Zydax. If you are looking for a custom gaming PC, they are a great option to do so. In the past, it has been very difficult to get a hold of graphics cards, and if you're looking to get a PC, really, it seemed as if the best way to do so was with a custom-built PC. Comes with warranties, comes with all the parts that you might need. You can choose what you want. Zydax PC, I'm very thankful to have their support. I'm a big gamer, and if you want to watch some streams, I'm planning on doing more streams in the future on Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. But getting that out of the way, the unsafe handgun roster. Well, if you live in the state of California, well, even if you don't live in the state of California, this is going to be very interesting to you. This court case is going to be one to watch, because I know many of you are probably saying, why don't we just challenge the NFA? Why don't we just challenge suppressors? Why don't we just make full autos legal again? Shall not be infringed. Well, I agree. That would be awesome for people to be able to exercise their rights to keep and bear the types of arms they wish to keep and bear. You got to do things little by little. Court cases like these matter a lot for setting the groundwork and the framework for getting rid of bans of other types of firearms. Right now, handguns are, as recognized in Heller, the quintessential self-defense weapon. In the state of California, if you wanted to get a firearm like this P320, if you are not a law enforcement officer or, let's see, members of groups like the Department of Motor Vehicles, the Horse Racing Board or something like that, lots of organizations with law enforcement are now exempt from the restrictions, meaning that if you want to get one of these as a normal person, you can't easily do that without paying a huge markup by buying them from a law enforcement officer or from someone who happened to move into this state with one of these guns. Because the state of California has declared that guns without these certain features are unsafe. Now, what are those features? Well, the common features that you would see on a gun that is on the roster for a brief period of time would be things like loaded chamber indicators, magazine disconnects, physical safeties, guns that are drop safe. Some examples of the guns on the roster that have all of those features would be things like the Smith & Wesson Shield. Then in 2013, I believe it was, the state required microstamping. Now, microstamping is a technology that when you fire the gun, it would leave an imprint on the casing of a semi-automatic handgun. It would leave an imprint on the casing that could be identified to that specific firearm. That technology seems interesting. However, it's impossible and infeasible, I guess would be a better way to say, to implement on a wide scale for manufacturing, because every single firing pin or every single slide, however the technology would be implemented, would have to put a unique identifying mark on that gun. So, like how every gun has a serial number on it, every firing pin from that same gun, or every slide from that same gun, or every barrel, however it was that they would decide to do it, would have to leave that same mark. Now, what if someone decided to not do that? Well, if that manufacturer did not want to comply with that as of 2013, we have no new models of firearms on the market. So, for example, things like the Glock 19 Gen 3, it doesn't have any of the features that I mentioned. No physical thumb safety, no magazine disconnect, no loaded chamber indicator on the slide or barrel. Yet how is that still on the roster? Because that gun, the Gen 3 Glocks, which are very common and still sold today in the state of California, are legally, per the state's definitions, unsafe handguns, yet you can still buy those. Does that make sense? Not really. Well, that's because those were grandfathered in. Those got put on the roster prior to those laws existing. Now, since microstamping initially required 2 locations on the casing to imprint that mark for a handgun in order to be put on the roster as a not unsafe for sale handgun, well, that was then reduced recently down to 1. Interestingly enough, because the DOJ said, hey, this technology exists, there's no patent issues, this technology could be implemented. The interesting part is that through some litigation, which I believe was the National Shooting Sports Foundation when they were involved with that, the state admitted that the technology, just because the DOJ said, hey, it is legally possible because there's no patent issues with it, even though it is technically possible, it is not practical and not capable of being done on a wide scale by a manufacturer like Sig Sauer, Glock, Smith & Wesson. They simply don't have the ability to do it and produce a firearm capable of it at scale. Could it technically be done on a one-off? Sure, yeah, maybe. Could it be done on a wide scale? Absolutely not. And there's a reason that no new firearms have been added because of that microstamping. Many firearms manufacturers like Sig, I believe Smith & Wesson, and Ruger had options with the loaded chamber indicator, magazine disconnect, meaning that when you take the magazine out, the gun won't fire. This gun does not have a magazine disconnect. This gun was purchased at a heavy markup because I cannot just go buy this from a normal retailer. We have issues with the handgun roster. Now, if laws like these were to be challenged and were to be successfully overturned, this would potentially set the groundwork for more court cases in the future. Things like the assault weapon ban are already being challenged, and that's awesome. Firearms Policy Coalition as well has a lawsuit against the handgun roster. I'm very positive, I'm very hopeful with this court case. We have a judge that was a George W. Bush appointee. Now, you cannot always assume that a judge appointed by a Republican is always going to rule pro-gun or pro-Second Amendment in these cases, but it is better than a judge with a track record of cutting your rights at the knees. I'm very positive, I'm very hopeful with this court case. If you want to get involved and support, check out the California Rifle and Pistol Association. I want to give a shout out to my buddy Costas. If you are on Twitter, you can follow me, you can follow him. I'm going to leave a link down to his Twitter as well below. He posts a lot of his thoughts and updates and just generally comments on Second Amendment issues and is a very good source to follow if you're just interested in learning more. I am not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. I am just a plaintiff in this court case. If you want to support me, that's great. If you want to support me because of my involvement in this lawsuit, I would maybe recommend considering supporting financially the California Rifle and Pistol Association. You can also consider supporting the Firearms Policy Coalition, as they also do a whole lot with the state of California with their lawsuits. I mean, they're constantly just pumping out lawsuits nationwide, and I think they're also a great organization to support. If you want to support a state-specific org, the CRPA is, in my opinion, the one to go with, and it's why I'm so happy to be a part of this lawsuit. Lance Boland, the main plaintiff on this, is actually a firearms instructor down in Southern California. Big thanks to him. Myself, and several of the other people involved in this lawsuit are simply private citizens who wish to have adequate firearms for lawful purposes like self-defense, sporting, and whatever else it is that is a lawful purpose. These court cases are important. I'm very happy to see some motion going forward. A lot of court cases were kind of slowed down due to SB 1327, which was the court case or the law that Newsom and whatnot signed that would shift fees from the state to people who wish to challenge gun laws. Now, 1327 was a bill that was modeled after Texas's abortion law. Basically what it would do is, let's say we, as the plaintiffs, say, hey, 5 things. We want to challenge the state on these 5 things, and we are successful, for the most part, getting 4 out of those 5, or whatever number of challenges is that are being made. If we say, hey, boom, 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 these are all our points, and almost all of them except 1 is successfully ruled and granted in our favor, we would have to pay the entirety of the state's legal fees. So not only do you pay through your taxes, the legislature to draft the bills, the governor to sign the bills, the attorney general to defend these laws in court, you would then have to pay organizations like the CRPA to fight for your rights, to get your rights back. Then, if not all of the arguments are made correctly, or not all of the arguments are deemed successful for whatever reason, the state of California could seek to get those fees paid back by the plaintiffs. That was a huge deal, slowing a lot of court cases, but we are moving forward. Now, if this motion for preliminary injunction is granted, it would potentially mean that the handgun roster would be gone pending the end of this whole trial. Now, even if we are successful, this is likely going to be going to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which, if you've been following this channel, or any channel that covers California Second Amendment news, is not ideal. However, having a win being challenged at the Ninth Circuit is always favorable to challenging and trying to overturn a loss at the district court level. I'm very hopeful that this judge rules in our favor and in the favor of the rights of the people to keep and bear arms, because currently in the state of California, we don't have a lot of good options. If you're left-handed, if you are looking, or just have small hands in general, if you have some sort of disability, there are not a whole lot of great options for concealed carry firearms in the state of California, or just home defense pistols in the state of California. When it comes to concealed carry handguns, the only real options we have are like a Glock 26, a Shield, some car models. Those are the big heavy hitters. And the problem is that even though we do have some options, because the options we have are so limited, everything is more expensive. Every single state, or every single manufacturer that produces a firearm for the state of California is producing essentially a over decade-old technology, in some cases over 15-year technology. No new updates, no new modifications, no improvements, even safety improvements can be made to any of their models. Does that seem like it's actually going to do something for safety? Because after all, we are challenging the Unsafe Handgun Act. Let me know what you think down below. You guys know the drill. Have fun, be safe, stay dangerous. Peace.